We've got 5:30, ladies and gentlemen, so I'll open the meeting. May I firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet on today. I humbly pay my respects to the people of the Wiradjuri Nation, their past, future and present elders. I note that there are a number of people in attendance. If you are asked to evacuate, the emergency procedure is to exit by the door leading out of the building directly outside the council chambers and proceed to the footpath opposite the council chambers and await further instructions. I'd just like to notify everyone that this council meeting is being streamed live, recorded and published in accordance with council's live streaming in council meetings policy. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The Chair and or the General Manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Okay. Public forum today. We have two speakers to present to council. The first speaker on the agenda today is Mr. John White from Allied Grain. John.
Good afternoon, Mayor Ingram, Anthony, the General Manager, and fellow councillors. My name is John White. I'm the Director of Allied Grain Systems. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address Council on this very important matter. Allied Grain Systems are applying to have our Rockdale Road and Withers Lane operating hours extended to 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. Allied Grain Systems have grown as a company over the last number of years, and to accommodate the extra workload, we need to extend our operating hours to accommodate this additional work and potential future work, and to allow us to grow and create more employment and economic benefits to our local community. It is vital to our business that Council support Allied Grain Systems and allow us to extend our operating hours to 24 hours per day, as we cannot meet our current or future contractual commitments by only operating in the time zones allocated to us in our current consent. Allied Grain Systems want to continue to grow as a company and provide employment and training to our local community, but are restricted in expanding our company unless we can operate 24 hours per day. Allied Grain Systems have invested millions of dollars in infrastructure to make us a truly national company, and it is not economically feasible to only operate in the hours currently allocated to us. To continue to meet our current contractual commitments, Allied Grain Systems would need to duplicate our current infrastructure if we are not able to extend our current operating hours. Duplication of our existing infrastructure would be an enormous cost and financially unfeasible. Hence a request for extended operating hours so we can fully utilise our existing manufacturing and operations to full potential. The additional operating hours will create additional employment, and we look to employ another 4 to 5 people at least initially, with a view to expanding on this. We are located in a suitably zoned industrial area where extended hours of operation should be allowed to let business operate to their full potential and in turn create additional revenue and employment to our local community. Regarding requests for noise testing that we've received from Council, we do not believe this is warranted, as our neighbour who has complained lives some 200 metres away which is across a railway line and across a public road from where we are. And it's near to the fire brigade premises and the SES operation, who are all currently operating 24 hours today currently. I would also like to raise a fact that if noise monitoring was performed, I'd like to know how it could be determined the actual noise is being produced by Allied Grain Systems and not from vehicles on the public road, the emergency services activities, SES activities or operations in the rail corridor, which are closer to our neighbour than we are. Also, with the introduction of the $5 million grant to reopen the rail infrastructure in Young and surrounds, we believe that the amount of noise produced by trains going along the railway line, which is closer to our neighbour, would create substantially more noise than we would ever produce, therefore making our noise issue insignificant to being near an operating railway line. Allied Grain Systems are currently tendering a lot of work for GrainCorp, future regeneration projects, expansions, and we have become a preferred supplier given our recent successful handover of the GrainCorp training storage facility and other related projects. Okay. We applied to Council to extend 24 hours operation on the 15th of August, more than 3 months ago. As a lot of these GrainCorp tenders are being awarded over the next 4 to 8 weeks, Allied Grain Systems need to have this DA approved within the next 4 weeks to confidently accept future projects from GrainCorp. Allied Grain Systems employ over 50 people and provide local training and pathways for younger people of our community. Again, with extended operating hours, we will be able to increase employment and training to locals, in turn give more back to our community and local economy. Allied Grain Systems currently sponsor Young Rugby League, Rugby Union, Young Cherry Festival, Young Radio and numerous other charities and events in our community, as we feel it is our responsibility as a company to support our local region. Allied Grain Systems feel that to deny 24 hours operation for our business due to one single objection would be a huge economic loss to both ourselves and our community, especially when we are located in a suitably zoned industrial land suitable for this activity. I read with pleasure prior to the recent council elections that nearly all councillors all stated that they wanted to promote industry and growth in our region. I feel council, by supporting Allied Grain Systems in operating 24 hours, will be achieving this. Thank you for your time.
Second speaker to address council is Mr. Frank Baker. On tips, Ringo Village and footpaths. With 5 minutes, Frank, and I'll give you a little tip at 4 minutes.
Thank you, yeah, I might need that. Mr Mayor and General Manager, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I went to one of the council workshop in Young and was amazed to find the representation from Monteagle, Bendick-Murrill, Bribri and Maringo at this meeting. We all had the same main topic, tips, on our agenda. On Wednesday our skip bins are emptied. By Saturday they are all full to overflowing. It is getting worse since permission and keys has been given to residents of Young and Boorowa to use our tip whenever and however they want. All the other villages had the same problem. We were promised a camera to verify where and whom the rubbish is coming from. This has not happened, to our knowledge. Who and where and whom the rubbish is brought. This is not happening. Who has the responsibility to clean up our tip? We were threatened that we did not improve our facility, we would lose our tip. If this is not our problem, whose problem is it? Is it yours or ours? can that be rectified, please? My next problem is the state of our tarred roads. Our roads are not holding up, and I feel it is due to the quality of tar that is being used by the contractors when it is first laid. The quality of tar is not suitable for our hot conditions. On a hot day, the tar just about flows off the road. A typical example of this is the T intersection at Maringo. It is also very nice. It would be very nice if the road kills were removed from the roads before they become a purifying mess. I still think that the amalgamation is not working, as the small outer areas have lost their identity and haven't gained a thing. We at Maringo had a footpath constructed between the school and hall. It was really great for the children to walk from the school to the hall safely. With the footpath, the children could run down from the school and return back to the school regularly. The younger children went to playgroup once a month, and the children walked to the hall for all activities, particularly at the end of the year for the annual concert. 2 years ago, we had a flood which washed the centre of footpath away. Since then, a teacher has to escort each individual child across the road, as it is illegal for a child under 10 to cross a main road unescorted. I don't know whether this could be helped, but would it be feasible for a team of the council to stop with the stop and go signs to come out to Maringo when necessary to help our school? Maringo has a great community spirit. Thank you. Please don't wreck it. We are proud of our Maringo, and in the Hilltops area we want it to stay the way it is. I haven't put this on the letter, but I heard last night from about quite a few people that the road, the tip, is being let open to people from the Wambanumber estate right through to Boorowa, the outskirts of Boorowa, and everybody's taking their rubbish there, and it's just not working. And we want something urgently done about it, and particularly to the footpath. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, if I could just ask a quick question in relation to Mr Baker's speech to the Director in relation to the footpath. It's a matter I raised during the times of the LRC, and it has been, as Mr Baker pointed out, some time. When is that footpath likely to be fixed?
Through the Chair, a bit of a delay caused by needing to do some hydraulic design of the area there so that the scour that was evident that caused the trouble in the first place won't come again. So that design's done, and that's the next project on the books after the team finishes the Blau Road scour work, probably at the end of next week, so it'll be the week following that.
Could I make a comment, please?
Mr Mayor, can I just ask a question of the first speaker?
You may.
It's partly a question, partly a comment, but it's going to be hard, and in fact, as you would have read the council business paper, you risk a deemed refusal if you don't do a noise report. But I can't understand why you would object to a noise report. It provides a background level of noise for which assessments can be based. Can you give a justification that you think might past council for not doing a noise report. It's a pretty standard procedure. But a noise report doesn't identify where the noise comes from. It provides a background level of what the noise is, regardless. So that's the whole point, whether it's chirping birds, dogs or trucks.
Council will cover this when we get to the order. Thank you. Okay. Item number 4 are apologies. There's one apology from Matthew Stadmiller. Are any other apologies? Someone move those apologies be accepted. Move Councillor Flannery, seconded Councillor Rolls. Thank you. Item number 5, if we could be upstanding please for the expression of sympathy. Stand. Minute silence for the following: Patricia Bates, James Henman, Barbara Lawrence, Constance McFadden, Nicole Doyle, Edward Ford, Joan Johnson, Father John Airy, Bernice Sand, Hayley Anderson, Morris Gordon, Brian Johnson, Benita Woodham, Percy Piper, Barry Stratford, Robert Lee, Kevin Nelson, and Nation Sheen. Ladies and gentlemen. Item 6 is the confirmation of minutes.
Move those, Mr. Mayor.
Sounds like you may have not been present that day, Councillor Wallace.
Mr. Mayor, just on the minutes and the business paper, could I request that we have a works report included in the business paper in the future?
You may. Noted. So are we happy enough to move those minutes with the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Manchester and Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? So be it. Item 7 is business arising from the minutes. There's no business arising from the minutes. Do we have any declarations of interest? We do. Just having trouble with my iPad, sorry people. Could IT lady or someone fix that for me please? That's how it goes. Rolls. Up and down. I don't want it sideways, please. I don't want it up like that, mate. Like that. That's what I want. I don't want to go up and down. Okay, read the declaration of interest. There's only the one. Any further?
Mr Mayor, 17222, my wife is on one of the committees that had an application for funding, so non-pecuniary.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Will you move those declarations of interest? Or we note them? Note them. Thank you. Mayoral minute. There's none. Notice of motion. We have a notice of motion from Councillor who's an apology. Mr. General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as you can see, there's a notice of motion there from Councillor Stadmiller that is to direct funds of $350,000 to the Harden Racecourse Precinct. The only information that was provided with that notice of motion when it was submitted is attached there for reference for councillors, so it's now up to councillors whether they want to do anything with that notice of motion or let it lapse.
Mr Mayor, I wonder if I could add an amendment to that motion, please. I'd like to request that Council supply a report of the condition of all the facilities at the racecourse and include that report at in the next business paper.
Someone have to move it? We have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded, Councillor Horton. So the motion is pretty straightforward, to direct funds of $350,000 to the Harden Racecourse Precinct.
Excuse me, Mayor, can I just make a comment on that? I certainly don't disagree with spending some funds out of the racecourse. There is some of the infrastructure out there does need upgrading. There are about 4 user groups or 5 user groups out there, and what I would suggest that, and probably support the proposed motion that Councillor Horton's doing, I would suggest that the user groups get together and list a priority out there of items that need attending to, and some items out there that I believe that the user groups can fix, and other stuff which is major that I believe the council can get involved in. But I think it's a fact of the user groups working together like they do in other sporting areas.
Question, Mr Mayor, just in relation to funds that have been already allocated to the showground, is it correct there was $170,000 already allocated to different projects at the showground?
Through you, Mr Mayor, in the list of sub-projects that had been proposed to date, yes, there was $170,000 allocated out there that covered off on some of the key items that have been raised as an issue. In addition to that, there is funding that has been allocated towards providing backbone water and sewer infrastructure out to the area too that could be picked up by the other facilities. But in saying that, as councillors would recall, there is the intention to have further consultation with the community on the overall allocation of the $1 million that's been put towards sporting infrastructure in Harden. So we haven't moved forward yet with any of the projects that had been allocated those funds until that process is still finalised.
So Flannery.
Mr Mayor, could I just speak against the motion, noting no one's actually spoken for it yet?
Do note that.
And consistent with Councillor Tuckerman's comments that there has been an allocation funding which, whilst not yet finalised, is sitting there to be spent. There are user groups working together now, and I'm working with them as part of the Sporting User Groups Committee. There's a lot of competing interests for finances in a number of precincts in Harden with rundown structures, McLean Oval being amongst them. And I believe the racecourse is going through the proper processes that we have established with the HRDC and the sporting user group. So I believe it's in train, and whilst it's always good to have people interested, being up to speed would be more helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Does anyone actually want to speak for the note?
Just through Mr. Mayor, I share Council's concerns that these facilities should be shared facilities, and I agree entirely. I think that the point that needs to be made is that from photographs supplied by Councillor Statman, the facilities out there are rather primitive, and certainly with the development of the RFS headquarters in the area and the potential for our subdivision, industrial subdivision to go along, I can see that there's going to be even greater interest in facilities out there and greater potential for use of those facilities. I've supported the motion for the purpose of discussion. We'll have the discussion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Tuggerman?
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify? Is it a Crown Trust that operates the showground?
Refer to the General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's Crown land that is under the care and control of Council, that is managed by a management committee that consists of the user groups out there. So it is a fairly complicated management structure, but it's a Crown asset that's under Council's care and control.
My comment to the debate is that at a workshop recently I mentioned with all councillors present, I think, that there would be another meeting between myself and the representative from the Harden community, so we could judge where they would like to see that money spent. Unfortunately, Councillor Stadmiller wasn't at that workshop, and that's been an undertaking that I've made to that organisation and group over there, and I will follow through with that in regards to the overall spending of the funding that's been allocated that way. This notice of motion is there for us to vote on as it stands. So was there any other speakers in regard for or against the motion? If not,
well,
Councillor Walker.
If I may, it's only.
Push it up.
It's all right. Thank you. Amateur driver, that's all. It is going to recommend it to for future decision, and that's all we're doing. We're not making no decision on spending it at the moment, or it's only for a. Is the motion about directing some amount of funds for future consideration to be spent there? Or are we actually spending it? What is the motion? It says there to direct those funds to the Harden racecourse.
The direct funds of $350,000 to the Harden racecourse president. I believe that's the motion we're going to vote on.
From where?
Out of the funding that's been allocated to the Harden area for the strongest music brings is my.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, in the subject line, it's rather clear where it comes from. It says stronger regions grants money.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to clarify, if we're going to get into semantics, Council doesn't have any funding in their program titled that. Council currently has funds allocated in the Stronger Communities Fund, which are at hand to Council. We've also got grant applications in for other projects at the moment in what's called a Stronger Country Communities program, but the program that was identified in the email there doesn't exist as far as I'm aware.
Again, councillors, if there's no further
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, does that
speakers?
motion include the amendment that I submitted?
Not currently, no. Would you like?
Well, we voted on it, didn't we?
No, we haven't.
Have we?
No.
Okay, well, I'd like that amendment included.
We would need to vote on the amendment
Yes.
being put. I think we vote on the motion that's in front of us, councillors. As it stands, all those in favour of the motion to direct funds of $350,000 to the Harden Racecourse Precinct. Those against? Oh. Motion lost. Thank you. Notice of rescission, there is none. I would ask council, but at this present time, could I get a motion to suspend the standing orders to enable item 17219 in regard to the extension of operating hours at 41 Rockdale
I'll second it.
to be dealt with? Thank you, Councillor Flannery and Councillor Hawke.
Before we do, can I have a question? At one time in previous history, we used to have delegates' reports and civic duties. Do we have them at all?
Councillor Walker, that was a very pertinent point that was going to be brought up later on in the meeting, that I spoke with the General Manager in the last week in regard to that matter, and that will be re-entered into our agenda for our council meetings, and it will either be at the beginning like it used to be in the former Young Shire or at the completion, but there will be an opportunity for all councillors to report on their committee duties and any other matters that they feel pertinent, and we can do that tonight at the end if you like, but it has been mentioned and it will be added to the next council meeting. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, item 17219 relating to DA 2017 DA 00142 for the extension of operating hours at 41 Rockdale Road and 2 Withers Road in Young. As you'll see included in the report here, and a planning assessment was undertaken by the Director of Planning from the Ashes Valley Council, Chris Berry. The opportunity, he wasn't able to attend tonight to talk to the report due to a meeting for Yass Valley Council, but there was the opportunity for a bit of a briefing prior to this meeting on the report. The context behind the assessment, as you'll see there, is that noise is basically the biggest issue for consideration in assessing the DA. You'll see that the recommendation in the report, as is listed, includes the requirement to undertake a noise study. You'll also see included in the report there, and the reasons behind why a noise study is being recommended, so that it helps, it would assist in setting a baseline and understanding whether the EPA noise guidelines can be met by the development. You'll also see included in the report that there is mention in there of provision for balancing up social and economic benefits related to a development and contrasting that against the noise aspects of the development too. So the recommendation that's been put to council, as you can see, is that the development be basically the recommendation is that the noise study is undertaken in accordance with what's listed there. You can also, as I mentioned in there, see about the social and economic impacts. One of the concerns for council that council needs to weigh up in making its decision is what would happen down the track if council did approve the development at the moment without any provisions for a noise assessment, and what would then become the compliance burden that may eventuate down the track. So what council really needs to weigh up is that economic and social benefit, as was indicated by Mr. White, and then the risk associated with not requiring the noise study to be done and then potentially creating noise compliance issues down the track. The council would then be responsible for addressing under the Protection of the Environment Operations Act, and then the onus would be back on council to demonstrate that the development is actually breaching the noise limitations rather than doing it up front the other way around and having the applicant manage those noise issues. So the recommendation from staff is as listed in the business paper at the moment.
Just before we go anywhere with that, I'd just like to confer with the General Manager just for a second. I'm quite happy to have debate on the recommendation that's there in front of everyone, but I will foreshadow that I'll have an alternate resolution to put to council in regard to this matter. that I feel is more pertinent.
Mr Mayor, consistent with my comments earlier and aimed really at developer, I can only, based on the recommendation we've got and the fact that the objections coming from planning department really, or an employee of the council, I can only strongly recommend that a noise assessment report be done. Having been in similar situations before, it provides information which then enables council to make a decision either way. It doesn't necessarily exclude whether the development should proceed, and it's pretty clear what the recommendations are from the planning department of a neighbouring council. So to really give the council the opportunity to make a decision on this, I can only strongly recommend that you get a noise report done. The only other question I might have is, I noticed the trading at the moment you can operate on Sundays, whereas now this is precluding that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, can I just clarify that under recommendation 4, I would actually change that recommendation in the report that Monday to Saturday be 24 hours and Sundays and public holidays be in accordance with the current hours of consent on those days.
Mr Mayor, could I, through you, just like to ask the interim general manager, was the home of the house that concerned about the noise, was it built before the or after the establishment was working?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the house was there well before the development.
Was there before? Thank you.
So, had the speaker for, a speaker against?
I'll move it if Councillor Flannery hadn't. I'll second it if he had.
Look, I'll move it, or second. I'm happy. I'll second it. You've moved it.
Sorry, I'm just having difficulty understanding what you want to move. All of it, or just?
Well, I'm moving the recommendation as stands with the minor amendment as per the General Manager's comment that the trading hours for Sunday and public holidays be as per the current approved DA. So the recommendation that a noise assessment must be conducted and the following points.
So we've got a speaker against the recommendation, Councillor O'Connor.
From what Mr Berry provided yesterday, doing a noise assessment report runs into tens of thousands of dollars. He didn't seem convinced that it would provide accurate information, and I can't see why a business that's bringing that much economic benefit to the community shouldn't be allowed to run 24 hours a day.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Speaker for the motion.
Look, I'd just like to speak for it again because I think it provides the information council needs, and we risk end up being the decision being challenged. So it's a good investment in certainty. There's no guarantee council, regardless of the noise report, wouldn't support. Well, I think council's at its liberty to support it, despite the noise assessment report. But a good noise report provides a good baseline.
Thank you for that. I'll speak against the recommendation, and strongly. The business we're talking about is in an industrial zone that has been mentioned, is bordered by a railway line that we've got a cheque in the air for $5 million and seeking more funding to reopen. There is a road running right beside it as well. I firmly believe that the social and economic benefits by allowing Allied Grain to increase their working hours, to employ more people, to showcase what the community of Hilltops region and the young industrial area can produce. And if you've had a look at the information provided by Mr White in this report, you will see the great work that his company does and the people it employs and how highly his organisation is held. I would feel disappointed from my point of view, having stood to be a councillor to help our industry and help our region grow, if I was to deny someone the opportunity to run their business to the maximum. My reason for that, I will repeat it again, is because I firmly believe the social and economic benefits to our community, which will be clear, will outweigh any disadvantage or any problem that might be arise by not having a noise study done first. We had information provided to us yesterday from the gentleman who did the planning, who quite openly stated to the people who were in there, I'll say it again, that there is real justification for using them reasons for allowing a DA of this such to go through. So, on the advice given by him and the firm belief I have that they outweigh it, as I said, I foreshadowed a alternate motion to the one put up if this one was not to be successful. Any other speakers for?
I agree with everything you've said, Mr. Mayor. We're trying to grow the economy. We're trying to get people to live here. This organisation employs 50 people and their families. And the fact that the house was built after the company was set up there, so I beg your pardon, it was there before the company. Either way, we need growth, and I think we have to forsake one household for the 20,000 people that live in the Hilltops and get on with getting businesses to grow and develop. We've been talking about that at these meetings for the last 6 weeks, that we want the communities to grow. All our young people leave and go to Canberra and Wagga and Sydney and Melbourne, and they leave because there aren't jobs here. Here's an opportunity to get more jobs. You could put in double glass windows, as they've done in Geelong, to stop the noise from the trucks there. What about the trains that used to go down there? And all the noise from buses and all the rest of it. I think it's a disgrace that we're even debating this. It should be just approved and get on with and grow the community.
Thank you, Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This council, in its short term, has had these challenges of where the planning is happening near the change of zones, and this is another example of it. I think, as a prudent council, we need to ensure that this testing is done. As Councillor Flannery pointed out, if the testing doesn't comply with the EPA, it can always come back to council and we can consider it then. But if it does comply, it gets approved straight away, and it is a small cost for the applicant compared to these alternatives which he outlined himself in his speech. I wouldn't like to be part of a council that isn't prudent in this matter and suffers the consequences and greater financial cost later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. That being said, the motion will now be put to councillors to be taken as stated in the business paper. All those in favour? 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow. Okay. So, council, we have 5 for, 5 against. Being at the situation tonight where Councillor Stadmill isn't present, that allows the Mayor to have a deciding vote, and I guess after the comments I just made, you'll have a rough idea which way that vote is, and that vote is to move is against the current motion that is there and to put an alternate motion on the floor. So that motion is lost. The alternate motion that I would like to put to council, and unfortunately we're here and we haven't got it on board, so I'll read it to council. That council approve an extension of the operating hours at the Alloy Grain site at Lot 1 and 2 DP 1205380 41 Rockdale and 2 Withers Road, Young, as follows. Monday to Saturdays 24 hours. Sundays 7:30 to 4 p.m. with no machine, tool or vehicle noise occurring before 8 a.m. or after 4 p.m. Public holidays 7:30 to 4 p.m. with no machine, tool or vehicle noise occurring before 8 o'clock or after 4 p.m. other than those with restricted trade limitations by the New South Wales Industrial Relations Commission. And then the following consents that were in the reports that is there. The other point that I would put with that recommendation is that the operator shall implement best management practice on site, including but not limited to the use of the quietest equipment and machinery that can do the job, scheduling the use of noisy equipment and machinery at the least sensitive time of the day, conducting all activities at night within the confines of the sheds, ensuring the doors of the sheds are kept closed at night when noisy activities are carried out, and to minimise vehicle deliveries at night. For the purpose of this condition, I would say night is defined as that period from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. That best practice management is a pretty basic thing that I believe that Mr. White would follow anyway. And as I said, the reasons for that decision are that I believe the greater economic and social benefits to the community outweigh any risk factor for council. And I'm open to if council was felt the way that this could be a probation period for 12 to 18 months, and then it could be relooked at to make sure that the noise wasn't causing too many concerns for people. I'm probably open to a amendment or adjustment of that in there, but as it is, that's the recommendation I'd like to move.
Mr. Mayor, accepting that it's been lost and listening to your motion, could I just move a minor amendment so that it reads along the lines of the EPA guidelines that the applicant use best endeavours to limit evening noise levels to the EPA guidelines by virtue of the means you mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Wallace.
The first term, I think, of those conditions was the quietest machinery for the job, which is fairly subjective. I was thinking of an example. I was thinking of a broom, and I was thinking of a vacuum cleaner. Now, you know, if we have terms of conditions which would make the applicant have to use a broom instead of a vacuum cleaner, I think the whole thing's ridiculous. Obviously, you don't mean that, and you mean the most practical and the quietest in terms of what's commercially feasible. That's my question. I suppose it's more of a comment.
I take your comment on board, Councillor Wallace, and quite clearly you understood the meaning of what I meant. That by that I meant that I would be disappointed and surprised if the applicant who lodged this DA seeked to take advantage of it. I'm pretty sure that the gentleman involved is far smarter operator than that, and that's what I indicated by those dotted points. I take on board Councillor Flannery's comment. So the motion's been moved and I've got a seconder. Would anyone like to speak against?
Question,
Councillor Armstrong.
Would you, Mr. Mayor, would you, with your, I commend you on your motion first of all. I believe that the employment and training opportunities identified by Mr. White will potentially be lost or at least seriously eroded should the business not be afforded 24-hour operation. I believe that refusal of this application would send a message that Hilltops is a closed shop. This, by supporting it, we are sending a very clear message that we're open for business. I guess my only concerns are that I share the concerns of Councillor Wallace in his comments, and perhaps if the applicant was to provide council with some form of noise abatement strategy that could be implemented over time, and perhaps we'd be able to work, council would be able to work with the applicant to ensure that there is a minimum of noise generated, taking on board the significant difference between a broom and a vacuum cleaner as far as noise is concerned.
Quite willing to take that on board, Councillor Armstrong. I'm sure council would be. Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, just in speaking for my amendment and noting that I assume actually that the approval sits with the company that currently exist on the land, but nonetheless business ownerships and personnel change over time, but we need to make sure that the approval is something that future councils can work with should there be further development or growing complaints, that we don't leave behind a mess for which almost makes future business impossible. So we should use our best endeavours to work within the EPA guidelines, and it gives a reference point for future councils to deal with. And I don't think, apart from that, I don't think there's been any suggestion by anyone here that this DA should be approved. Everyone that has spoken tonight is in support of it. It's a question of ensuring council doesn't suffer the backlash in the future from onerous complaints, given we had a complaints policy adopted some time ago. Presumably we can just ignore the complaints in the future if we follow the complaints policy, but we do have an obligation to council and the ratepayers to ensure that A, council doesn't get tied up in legal action, and B, the applicant doesn't get tied up in ongoing complaints which restrict his business because the EPA eventually come and step in.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Any other comments, speakers in regard to Councillor Walker?
Well, I've got a real problem with this. It seems to be if someone makes a complaint, one person makes a complaint, we're finding all the issues and the problems, and it's sending a message to me anyway, very clear, that we're looking for problems rather than solutions. Here we have as an opportunity of a business to grow, and we get one complaint from 200 metres away from an agricultural area that right alongside as orcharding and machinery noises and whatever they may be, and for some reason this person to me is being victimised because he wants to progress business within our Shire area. I have real problems with the whole principle of it, and I think that the original recommendation covers all the covering noise criteria amenity. It's already in the DA. The only thing that could have been left out is number 5, is the excessive noise monitoring. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. So we've got a mover and a seconder for the alternate motion. As the mover, there's not much more that I've got to say to what I've previously stated, except that I firmly believe that if we're to show a sign to our community and taking on Councillor Flannery's reports about being responsible and careful about the decisions we make, and for future operators and future councils to be open to action, I hold a firm belief that this is the right decision for this particular DA. So if everyone's understanding of that, I'd like to put that alternate motion.
Mayor, just a question. When you set the probation period of 12 to 18 months, is that...
That's not included.
That's not included?
At the moment, no. I'll put that out there just in case someone might want to ensure something by way of doing that, but it's definitely not part of the original alternate motion.
Yes, I was just wondering if that was included, how you intended the monitoring to be after that 12 to 18 months. Would it be by the number of complaints to be increased, or...?
Well, it would be up to noise monitoring to be taken place then.
Okay.
So it's not part of...
But that's not part of the motion.
That's not what the motion
Thank
is
you.
put. So I'd ask all those in favour of the alternate motion to raise their hands. 1, 2, 3, 6. Those against? So the alternate motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll go back to normal business now, where we were. I presume that's correct. The General Manager's report, are we? Very much. General Manager's So it's the General Manager's report.
Through Mr Mayor, item 17215 is the annual report for the 2016-17 year. As you see included in the report, it outlines the reasoning and process behind why an annual report is undertaken. You'll also see the annual report attached there that's available for reading. You'll see in the annual report there's quite a lot of activity occurred over the last financial year, and a lot of positive information in there about things that have been achieved, and also a bit of information on things going forward. So the recommendation is as included in the report.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Seconded Councillor Connor. All those in favour?
Mr Mayor, just a couple of questions.
Questions?
Could I ask for just some details to be supplied as per the contents of the annual report? So there's some significant spending items there, $401,000 for the Boreal Pool, so to be included in next month's business paper. Hall Brothers Oval, the detail. Well, firstly, did the Boreal Pool allocation, was it on the Boreal strategic plan, or where did the funding come from for the pool upgrade at the Boreal Pool? Details of the funding or resources for the Hall Brothers Oval construction. Details of the Apps Lane realignment and where it fits with the Sheridan Hill issue. And details of the VPA for Sibelco, and that may or may not have to go on confidential next. Is it? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to answer those questions now, because I know the answers. The Boreal Pool upgrades, the works that were undertaken there were funded out of an infrastructure reserve that the former Boreal Council had in place that was included in the long-term financial plan of the former council that carried forward during the financial year. So when we set the budget for last financial year, what we did was just picked up the works that were included in the long-term financial plans of the former councils. The Hall Brothers upgrades were funded, and the Director of Infrastructure will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding through a LERS grant funding program that the former Young Council had undertaken prior to the merger taking place. The Apps Lane works that are referred to there were funded by RMS. It's a state road project where council undertakes contract works as an ordered works project under the RMCC contract, where council provides services to RMS on the state roads. And the fourth one on the VPA for Sibelco, that VPA is actually a public document, and I can circulate that information. In terms of what the content of it is, there's an allocation per tonne of material that comes out towards roads, and another allocation towards general community infrastructure. And there's a committee in place that allocates where those funds, provides recommendations to council where those funds actually get allocated.
Noted. Just another point I missed is an error on page 91. On one point it quotes 5.9. If you're going to put a report in, it should be correct, I believe. It notes 5.9 k's of pavement rehab on Cunningar and Jugeong roads, and then in the next page it notes 5 kilometres on Cunningar Road alone. And could we get the rail, $5 million of rail funding for the Demondrel Railway line from Maimaru, as I understand it? What commitments or ties are there on that? I mean, it's to ensure the money isn't repurposed as per the previous RMS correspondence.
Through Mr Mayor, on that, the advice that's been continually provided back to council is that those funds are still there available for that work to happen. It's conditional on someone, whether it be the state government, council or the private sector, having a fully developed business case which includes agreements between rail freight carriers and producers to put stuff on the rail line. In addition to that $5 million that's currently been allocated, there is an expression of interest in with the New South Wales Government at the moment that was submitted by Cowra Council to actually fund the next section from Waimaru to Cowra. If that section of line gets funded, the business case is far stronger once you move past Waimaru, which will then allow basically the joint business case for the two sections to be put together and hopefully the whole project to commence as one. But as it stands, there is challenges in trying to get the level of detail the government wants to spend the funding on that Waimaru to Demondrel section, and it's all to do with them expecting a commitment, literally binding agreements in place between freight carriers and producers, and not too many businesses are willing to sign up to a contract to put material on a rail line that's not even open yet.
I think that's the purpose of my questioning, really, because my understanding is there basically is no business case at the moment. You've got two rail gauges which are different on the minor line or the branch line and the Sydney-Melbourne line, so any attempts to transfer grain, which might be one of the major uses, would rely on a dump site, which we don't have. So I just think in writing reports like this, we need to be open with the ratepayers and the public, because the chances of that $5 million being received outside the shiny photos and the big cheques are very limited, and putting forward a notion that it's almost, or leaving it out there that this work might proceed in the near future, I think is incorrect.
Points valid, Councillor Flannery, but we do live in hope. Or inquiries into that report? If not, we've had a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. All those in favour? Again? So be it. Thank you.
Item 17216, Draft Hilltops Economic Development Strategy. As you see included in the report here, the draft, what originally was called Economic Development Strategy and has now been renamed as the Hilltops Economic Action Plan, has been developed through quite extensive and intense consultation process. The draft was obviously to a point, and it was decided that we waited till Council was in place to have the opportunity to fully review that draft action plan, which, as you're aware, has now taken place. So the recommendation is that the draft, as is included in the business paper here, be put out on public exhibition for the public to have the opportunity to review it and provide input provided to it finally being adopted. So you'll note the second part there is that if we don't get any changes suggested by the community, that becomes an adopted plan of Council.
Any questions or in regard to this report?
Just an observation, Mr Mayor, that this would be on public display during Christmas, typically a very slow time of year as far as community responses to economic action plans, I believe anyway. I'd suggest that should be placed on display for more than 28 days, given that there is no council meeting scheduled for January. It could probably stay on display for 60 days without too much problem.
Very valid point, Councillor Armstrong.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that it be on display for 60 days, and if I've got a seconder, I'll make a couple of comments.
We've got a seconder, Councillor Manchester.
Firstly, can I make, I think, a pretty important clarification that we're in the Southwest Slopes area, and it refers to the tablelands. Now, Southwest Slopes, as noted in the workshop, is one of the most productive agricultural areas in Australia. The tablelands is not. We don't live in the tablelands. I also think the most important, and I also, can we please not refer this as to the heap? We tried to come up with an appropriate title that said we mean action, and someone seems to put an acronym heap up, which I just find offensive. And thirdly, the most important thing out of this is what are we going to do to action it to make sure it gets implemented. If we're just going to put it on public display and let it collect dust, it'll be to the detriment of all of us. So we need to get some action items going. And growth is identified as a limiting factor, so we need to jump on the back of Canberra, which further in the report we're later in the business paper we're voting on inclusion in the CBRJO. We need action items out of this plans. We need committees set up and work happening.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor O'Connor.
When we display it, could we have the report in its entirety, but then get from section 3.5 where the actual action plan is, and have it displayed separately? Because there will be people who won't want to go through the entire report, however they will want to see what actions we're looking at.
Thank you. I'll just make one comment then, and as Councillor Flannery, in regard to the HEAP, I would make a suggestion that could be called the Hilltops Economic Development Plan rather than the Hilltops Economic Action Plan. I think would appease this particular councillor better, if that's any help.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was going to say, you might recall it was originally called the Economic Development Strategy, and what the intention of council was to get action in it. The alternative is that council just makes it clear that we do not want to create an acronym for what it is, and we call it as it is, which is the Hilltops Economic Action Plan, not any acronym.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments in regard to the recommendation? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Again? Carried. So go ahead.
Item 17217, Hilltops Council Public Swimming Pools, waiver of entry fee at dive-in movie nights. I think the report here is self-explanatory. These events that are being referred to were highly successful last year, and they do provide a great opportunity for particularly the young people in the community to network and get out and do something, which is one of the things that council is aware is an issue in the community. So the recommendation is included.
Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Tuckerman.
Just a comment there through you, Mr. Mayor, is they talk about hiring a screen for this. The Kruger Trust did purchase a screen for this purpose. I don't know whether that's still about or what, but there was one purchased by the Kruger Trust.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
It's actually been used a few times in the park at Christmas, and it did work.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to go back and I'd have to take that on notice, what the screen we're actually using is and what the arrangements are. My understanding had previously been that we were using one of the ones that we had available, so I'm not quite sure on what the higher fee for that screen is. I think yes, it's worth understanding that and making sure it's the lowest cost possible to everyone, so that if there is a profit made, it can sort of be shared. But I don't think that's necessarily pertinent to the recommendation as it stands anyway.
Thank you for that, General Manager. Do you wish to speak?
Southern Cross Cinema are actually doing it, so I think it's their screen.
Thank you for that. So taking that on board, we've got a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Again? So be it.
Item 17218, Christmas decorations. You see the report here explains the context behind why this report has been put forward and the recommendations proposed. One of the very strong messages that came back out of the broader community last Christmas was that they were very disheartened by the fact we had a mixture of what the, call it, service level of Christmas decorations around the community were. So hence this report's being put forward with the recommendation as is proposed there.
I'll put the motion, Mr. Mayor.
We've got a mover and a seconder, Councillor O'Connor.
Can I have a comment on this matter?
Comment, Councillor Walker.
I noticed we've got the Christmas decorations in Young, And we've got our biggest annual festive activity attracting probably tens of thousands of people coming in within the fortnight. We've got Christmas trees up instead of promoting the great activity we have. I think in Young, even though this one applies to Burra and Harden, I think we need to be a little bit more sensitive to the economic and tourist activities in the area.
If I may, through Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Councillor Rolls.
Through the Mayor, this is just a comment. Living in Young itself and looking at the Christmas decorations, after one has seen them for the last 3 years, I wonder if in buying the decorations we consider that we rotate them in some way so that people coming every year don't see the same decorations there the whole time.
Make them look like a cherry?
Now it might sound tacky, but they're the sorts of things that people notice when they come into towns. And I must admit, when I saw the red tinsel go up, I thought, oh no, not again. Just a comment.
Point taken, Councillor Rolls. Agree. Councillor Armstrong, do you have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to convey my deep thanks to Council for putting up the Christmas decorations. As everyone knows, the community refers to me as Big David Greg. I applaud the General Manager for putting this report up. I also wish to convey my congratulations to the Director of Infrastructure and his staff for the way in which they've manicured the roundabouts, certainly in Burra Street at Young, and installed the Christmas decorations. I agree entirely with Councillor Rolls that it's appropriate that the decorations be renewed on a regular basis, and I'll be supporting the recommendation for that reason.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I'll make a comment that, given that last weekend I had the pleasure of welcoming a group of gate ball players from various states to Young for a competition, and then on Sunday night a group of about 150 golfers that have arrived for Golf Week in Young, and every person I spoke to was complimentary in regard to how the town looked and with the decorations up, and it's quite, as we all know, warming and pleasing when you get those comments passed on. So my congratulations and thanks to the staff for having that done, and it's much appreciated by us all.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think the decorations in Young look beautiful. They look terrific. And as a compromise for Councillor Walker, maybe we could put cherries on the Christmas tree.
Councillor Tuckerman, you had...
Can I just reflect also, Mr. Mayor, that some positive comments on ABC Radio today in regards to the Christmas decorations in Young.
Okay, having that been said, there's a recommendation there from Council. Have we got a mover and a seconder? Move? No, we did. So all those in favour? Again, so be it.
We've dealt with item 17.219. Item 17.220 is the membership of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation. Again, I think the report is fairly self-explanatory. The former Burra, Harden and Young councils had always been part of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation. There's been quite a bit of what you could say delay from the New South Wales government in clarifying their position on formalising any legislation around joint organisations, which has meant that it's been a little bit difficult for that organisation to move forward with clear direction. We're now at the stage where the government has come out and said that they are going to move forward with joint organisations. They've now, one of the things they've now said is that it won't be a compulsory thing, it will be voluntary for councils to be part of those organisations. So the intention of this report is to seek council to resolve to become a member of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation of Councils and move forward formally, and if council was to move that way tonight, that decision could then be fed to the upcoming Canberra Region Joint Organisation board meeting that's happening within the next fortnight. So recommendation is included.
I'll put that motion, Mr. Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. And the seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded, Councillor Tuckerman.
Question.
Question, Councillor Armstrong.
Mr Mayor, I noticed in some propaganda released by John Barilaro, $3.3 million is to be allocated to councils to assist them in the formation of JOs. And through you to the General Manager, a question to the General Manager, has Hilltops Council received any of that $3.3 million?
Through Mr Mayor, the answer to that is no. What they are suggesting is that each of the joint organisations will receive $300,000 towards helping them get set up. One of the ongoing advocacy roles the joint organisation has been playing is the need for some ongoing operational support for those joint organisations, particularly just to cover base administrative costs. So the answer to your question is no. The Council hasn't directly received anything, and one of the next steps now that this is being formalised will be to fully review the funding models for the joint organisations and how they are funded to be what they intend to be.
Thank you. I've had a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. If there's no other discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Again? So be it.
Item 17221 is the action summary report. The recommendation is included in the report.
I'll move the recommendation then, Mr Chair.
Move Councillor Manchester. Seconder, Councillor O'Connor, sorry. Any questions, discussion in regard to the recommendation? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Again? So be it.
Question, Mr Mayor, in regards to the expression of interest for Crown Lands negotiation program, do we have any information?
Through you, Mr Mayor, 15 minutes prior to the council meeting I did have a phone conversation with someone from Crown Lands and was advised that council has actually been successful in its expression of interest for the Crown Land negotiation program. That is not something that we'll be doing too much promotion of just yet. There's an initial meeting that's happening within the coming fortnight which will basically kick off that program and we'll get a better understanding of how it will work and the process that will be followed. But yeah, that is some positive news that our expression of interest was supported. And we were one of, I think, 5 within the state that got supported.
With Crown Lands, just through Harness Racing Association and the committee I sit on, there was a notice of a meeting to meet with the state government in regard to harness racing clubs that operate on Crown Land. That meeting was scheduled for the 5th of December. It's since been cancelled to take place early in the new year, but it was grabbing the attention of I think it's 3 clubs that currently use Crown Land facilities to discuss options and what might take place.
Yes, Mayor, another question, if you don't mind, in regards to some of the actions from the action plan. Funding for the weeds, where are we up to, and have we addressed that matter with the Minister?
Through Mr Mayor. So I can't recall whether at the last meeting we'd received the correspondence from the Minister to say there have been additional funds allocated to both regions, but we've now responded to that letter saying that's fine, but that doesn't address our issue of Hilltops being directly negatively impacted, and we request a resolution to the matter and want to meet with the Minister, and we've offered to go to Sydney for that meeting as well. We haven't had a response back yet as to whether we've got a meeting date or not, but it's something we are still pursuing.
Can I just ask another one? Thank you, Mr Mayor, in regards to Goldenfields Water and whether an expression of interest has been put up in regards to Boorowa security.
Through Mr Mayor, at this stage the expression of interest hasn't been put up. There's actually a report that is being prepared for the next council meeting which will seek council formal endorsement of the preferred option of what the water security solution is, which will be a pipeline. The reason it has taken this long to get to that point has been working through the integrated water cycle management strategy process to get the the thorough assessment done to be able to justify that decision being made. So we expect to have that report to the next council meeting, which will then lead into the expression of interest being submitted.
One other question for the Mayor, Mr Mayor, in regards to merger transition costs, whether we had any feedback from the government.
I can speak to that. I think there's been some positive news in regard to funding for transition that has been notified to me. There's no timelines indicated, and until we actually see the cheque, it's a different matter, but there is very positive reports coming out from the next level of government that council won't suffer any transition costs, and I will speak to that a bit later.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor, two items stemming out of previous council meetings, just the submission regarding scrap metal industry. Have we had any feedback from other councils, New South Wales farmers, or indeed the department handling the matter? And also in regard to the wind farm, could we have a copy of a submission on the next business paper, the Yass Valley wind farm that we tendered a submission to? Could that be reported to council, please? Copperbilla, yep. Now known.
So, through the Mayor, we have had feedback from other councils in the CBRJO in relation to the scrap metal. They've also lodged submissions with the Deputy Premier and Minister Barilaro. We've written to New South Wales farmers, to John Barilaro ourselves, and we've raised it at CBRJO.
Councillor Flannery.
And the wind farm, could we have that on the next lunch?
Any further questions? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. Again? So be it.
Item 17.2.2, distribution of council sponsorship funds. Again, the report here outlines what's being proposed to put forward, and the recommendations are as included in the report.
Mr Mayor, not noting I've declared a non-pecuniary conflict of interest in this, given my wife sits on one of the committees. Could I move the report, if I'm in a position to do so, with the amendment, noting here that the Harden District Education Foundation put an application in for $2,500. They were also owed $2,000 during the administration period that the former acting whatever, Mr Drowley, made numerous commitments that he would pay, and they have still not to receive the money, and that's noted in the report that there's $2,000 which should have been paid under the previous memorandum of understanding. So looking at the report, they're receiving the $2,000 which is a deferred payment, delayed payment, and there's no comment on their current application. Now when we look at the strategic action plan which we've just passed and the letter or our report on council initiatives, we note the importance of education, and I don't think there's a more successful group in the whole Shire. Indeed, they're the most successful education foundation in New South Wales, definitely if not Australia. They fund kids who are by and large from less fortunate families that go to the local high school at Harden into tertiary education. It's noted as one of our missing elements of the Shire and getting those kids back and living in this region. I strongly recommend we use the surplus funds to pay their backlog and pass the application of $2,500 for this year.
Through the Mayor, can I just comment?
Councillor Rolls.
Can I just respond to that? I agree wholeheartedly with the comments of Councillor Rolls, but note these are applications from individual community groups. Now it's up to the Brewer Education Foundation and the Young Education Foundation to make applications. So when we vote on the Dugong Art Exhibition or the Young Bowling Club, we don't vote on all the bowling clubs, we're voting on whoever makes the application.
We don't used to. Just three, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Armstrong.
Question to Councillor Flannery. Why didn't the former Harden Shire Council pay the $2,000?
That's a very, very, very good question.
Checks in the mail, there's not really in the mail at all. Is that the case? Or?
Okay. So we're at the situation with the recommendation. Now, Councillor Flannery, did you want an amendment to that recommendation?
Well, could I move the amendment they be paid to $4,500 rather than $2,000, please?
Seconder for the amendment. The seconder is Councillor Armstrong for the amendment. We need to vote on the amendment first, correct? All those in favour of the amendment? Again, the amendment is carried. So now we vote on the recommendation with the amendment. Would anyone like to speak about it before I put it? Or will someone move it and second?
Hi, Mr Mayor. The Dressage Association, are they amenable to the arena naming? Oh, okay. Sounds very cheap. I mean, usually naming rights go for a bit more than that. You've done well.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. So back to, did I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation with the amendment? Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Horton. Thank you. So all those in favour? Again, so be it.
Item 17223, Council submission to the Model Code of Conduct and Procedures. As you'll see, there's a submission included here that's been put together by representatives from the Canberra Region Joint Organisation. You'll also see, the reference is also made there to the proposed new Model Code of Conduct, which the submission is based on. There are a number of changes that are proposed that I guess help strengthen and clarify and better define some of the key components of the Code of Conduct. And you'll also see there are some issues that have been identified that the staff that have worked on the proposal believe might be a little bit overly rigorous. So you see the recommendation there is the Council endorse a draft submission prepared on the Model Code of Conduct and Procedure by the Canberra Region Joint Organisation.
I move that, Mr Mayor.
Moved to Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, can I just get clarification? I read when I was reading the report that one of the submissions is that councils require annual training on this Code of Conduct, which I can't see it at a glance here. I would oppose that. I think once in the term of a councillor's life is sufficient, but I think it's getting onerous to suggest that you need annual training. I think if there's problems they should be dealt with on the case basis.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor O'Connor. Oh, sorry.
Question 3,
Councillor Armstrong.
Mr Gentleman, how often is Code of Conduct training provided to staff?
There's no mandatory requirement for Code of Conduct training to be required of staff at the moment, and my understanding is the new code doesn't actually talk about it for staff either. So at the moment it's normally done at induction time, and then it is not something that we have currently got a scheduled periodic update on either.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Connor.
I actually like the mandatory Code of Conduct training on an annual basis because it gives us a reminder, like we are leaders in the community, and I think it keeps it fresh in our minds, and it hopefully prevents or staves off too many misconduct issues.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. I agree with that point, but also agree with the point I think that was being pointed by Councillor Armstrong. It seems to be loaded one way. But anyway, that's how it is. So if there's no more comments or questions in regard to the recommendation,
I'll move that we amend it to be once in the term of the council.
Councillor Rolls. Okay, so we have a amendment to the recommendation. Or is a change to actually what we've a change to the submission more than a amendment to the motion?
Well, a change to the submission, but noting we're putting it in with other councils, I seek advice from the General Manager on how that will fit.
Thank you. Also.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's two separate processes here really. So this is council making its own submission, so council can modify its own submission as it chooses. Then the Canberra Region Joint Organisation will separately make a submission, so whatever council does choose to do could be independent of what the Canberra Region Joint Organisation decides to do. So no issue with council proposing what's suggested.
Councillor Rolls.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, once the Code of Conduct gets finalised, if it does have that councillors have to undertake mandatory training once a year, councillors will have to. Council could have something stronger that says council would do it every 6 months, for example, but yeah, it won't be able to be less, stronger, weaker.
Yeah, we have to meet the requirements of the state.
I tend to agree with Councillor Flannery in regard to once a term. Councillor Rolls, I think that makes much more common sense in regard to this matter. So, with assistance, we will move the recommendation with a amendment.
An amendment that we put our own submission in to the state government LGA Act, or whatever the appropriate term is, to the government's review that councillors required to undertake training once in the term of their council period.
Excuse me.
Sorry, once in each term.
Thank you.
So through Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the new recommendation as it stands to pick that up would become, it is recommended that council endorse the draft submission prepared on the Model Code of Conduct and Procedure by the Canberra Region Joint Organisation, with the modification that rather than mandatory code of conduct training on an annual basis, it is once every term of a council.
I'll move that motion.
Moved Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor Flannery. There's no more discussion or question in regard to that. All those in favour? Aye. Again, so be it. Thank you.
Item 17224, Hilltops Councillor Young, PCYC. As you'll see here, this relates to the lease of the PCYC. Recommendation is included in the report.
So moved.
Seconded with a question. Just in relation to the financial implications through you, Mr. Mayor, it says there's a subsidy of $19,000 is granted. How is that determined?
It was determined on the basis of it was a renewal, and that's what they were in, was in their existing lease.
taken.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, on that matter, will that $19,000 subsidy be reported to the community in the annual report as a subsidy for business? Or as a subsidy for the state government?
Mr Mayor, they're an incorporated not-for-profit, so it will need to be reported in Council's annual report anyway. Yes.
With that in mind, could I suggest that some proper valuation is done so that we can actually work out what the true commercial value of that is? I assume that's what we're trying to quantify. Is what the true commercial value of the rent would be, so that we can get an accurate figure into the report rather than this $19,000 figure, which is just a hangover from before.
Noted. Councillor Wallace. The council will look into that true valuation, the current valuation of the property and business. Okay, is any other questions?
Just for the risk of being pedantic, so are we approving the renewal of a 9-year, 5-month lease subject to evaluation or regardless of the valuation?
As it stands, regardless, I would understand.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor O'Connor.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, so if I'm just not understanding this, if we recommend that that we follow the recommendations for the 9-year, 5-month period, does that mean that irrespective of what the valuation comes out as, we still pay $19,000, or is it going to be amended each year?
Through Mr Mayor, just to clarify, and this may help with clarifying the whole thing, the recommendation is worded as it stands. I would like to add a fourth recommendation to that there. It states that Council seek a valuation of what the commercial value of the lease arrangement would be for the purposes of accurately reporting to the community the subsidy that is being provided.
Will councillors understand the resolution to dot point 4 now? So could I have someone move that resolution with that? Councillor Manchester, Councillor Horton, thank you. No further questions. All those in favour?
What happened to the previous motion?
Sorry?
What happened to the previous motion?
Well, it's been amended. There's been a dot point added to it. The other motion was never put. The recommendation, there's been an extra dot point put onto that recommendation.
Was it put?
Beg your pardon?
Was the other one put?
No.
So what happened to it?
It's still there with an extra dot point on it.
So it was moved twice then?
We're moving with an addition.
We are.
So what happened with the original one?
Nothing, Councillor Walker. It was added. There's been a dot point added to it. Dot point 4.
Yeah, obviously.
Oh? Can you do that?
Would you like me to move that the amendment be put to council? That there be a dot point 4 added to it, as the General Manager indicated.
Excuse me, it wasn't the first one. I'm not sure that the consent that the first one was a move in the second or the first one. Well, just over there in the words there, just the dot point 4.
Thank you. So with the agreement of the mover and the seconder, originally. All those in favour? Again? So be it.
Item 17225, Hilltops Council and Young District Arts Council. Again, similar situation where an existing lease is up for renewal and the recommendation is as included in the report.
I'll make a similar point here in relation to the value of this lease. another point could be added.
I'll move it with the addition of point 3 as per the last motion so that we don't get into this again.
Thank you for your clarification, Councillor Plenary. The simple things. Okay, Council. So the recommendation has got a mover and a seconder with the dot point 3, identical to the dot point 3 that was in the previous plenary, and that ends the table. Let's be clear. Could you please read dot point 3 to Council?
So the third dot point is that Council seek a valuation of what the commercial lease should be so that the subsidy being provided can accurately be reported to the community.
Thank you for that. So I'll put the recommendation with the 3 dot points. All those in favour? Again? So be it. Thank you.
Item 17226, Model Code of Conduct Complaints Statistic Reports for 2016-17. Again, this is a requirement. The Council provides this report, and I think it's self-explanatory there. So the recommendation is as included in the report.
Councillor Hardin moved. Second note, Councillor Plenary. Any questions or debate? Move the recommendation. All those in favour? Again. So be it. Ooh, change.
The next item is item 17227, which is site selection for the Hilltops Cultural Community and Education Precinct-YOUNG. As councillors are aware, this is something that's been discussed during workshops. It's been a subject of considerable community interest for quite a while now, making a selection on a site. You've seen the report here. It again provides some of the back history of how we've got to this point. And I guess one of the key changes that's occurred since the process of selecting a site started and now is that the Department of Education have indicated an interest in working with Council to come up with a joint use library facility that could be to the benefit of the broader community as well as the young high school, and coming up with a facility that benefits both parties. So one of the things that is important to reiterate is that we're still in the early planning and negotiation phase of that process with the Department of Education, but it is moving along quite rapidly. And for us to actually have a little bit of certainty moving forward, it is important for Council to make a decision on which side it wants to move forward with, irrespective of whether the joint use agreement is successful, which hopefully it will be, or not. So the government hasn't yet completely committed to this, but they're going through the process of doing the work to hopefully make sure that is something that formally gets into place. So the recommendations in the report all basically revolve around that context, that there is a very strong likelihood that we'll be able to get more funds for the community by working with the Department of Education to get a better overall outcome. So the recommendations are as included in the report now.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Move Councillor Horton. Second Councillor Walker. Any questions or debate?
A couple of issues. If the Department of Education funding were not forthcoming, I suppose if we proceed with this motion, we're going to acquire the land and put it there anyway, aren't we? That's the effect of the motion. Yep.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that is what would be the outcome of the motion as it stands. And as Council is aware, we've got an application into the Regional Cultural Fund program at the moment too, and if we're successful in that expression of interest, we've got a window of time to do the detailed planning and business case. I haven't received any advice yet as to what the outcome of that expression of interest process is, even though they had originally stated 23rd of October would be the date. Whether they give an extension of time to go through more planning to get to the detailed submission stage, I'm not sure yet, but that window is basically getting shorter and shorter from when we'll know whether we've got to do more work in a hurry or not. So the intention would be that we have to move forward with something fairly rapidly, whether the education are in or not.
One further, if I may, Mr Mayor. On page, I think it's 23 of the report, there's the assessment done between Campbell Apex Park and Carrington Park, which gives scores for various criteria. Who does these? I just, to give equal scores for things that are patently not the same is I find a bit odd, and I just wonder about the merit and value of these sorts of things. I think people end up putting the numbers in they want to get the desired result.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the reality is it's a subjective assessment, and it wouldn't matter who did it, they probably would come up with different outcomes. That was done by a group of basically staff members came up with that assessment. And I think in the end the outcome is really much of a muchness between those two sites anyway. When you look at them overall, they basically offer fairly similar things.
Mr Mayor, look, I think the co-funding is an opportunity not to be missed. I do think so that we don't lose control of the debate, because there are still a lot of very mixed views on this. We need to be clear in the information that is out there. The nature of the co-funding from the Department of Education, i.e. that it needs to be on land or adjacent to it. It's not just for anywhere. There's a lot of information we need to make sure gets out there very clearly, so that we have an informed community and then they can make a good informed decision. And that whether people come forward, if people don't come forward that we think are interested parties, we go and seek advice from them. I think it's not good enough to say, well, it was on display, you had 28 days, we didn't get the response. We need to engage the community on this in the way we did recently with some of the community strategic plan. The other important fact is I don't think obviously there will be a heads of agreement into the usage and operation of this, but $9 million on a building takes a lot of maintaining, and we need to make sure we're not left carrying the can for it.
Valid points, Councillor Flannery. If I recall properly, Councillor Armstrong addressed that issue at one of the meetings we had with the Department of Education people. Also, your message about delivering the same message and storyline to everyone is important, to the point where there was some toing and growing with females today in regards to media releases in regards to this matter, and the Department of Education people are speaking with our PR department to make sure that whatever's released is the same information being released and not conflicting information. There's a lot of work to be done in regard to this matter, as the General Manager just alluded to, and to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and we have to move quickly and cautiously at the same time to see if we can make this happen. But yet, it's very relevant, your point about making sure everyone's talking about the same thing.
Even little things about the possibility of a community bus travelling from the CBD of Young to the library once or twice a day that helps, and that obviously needs costings to go with it, but helps make it in an accessible place. If we believe strongly in the location, we need to make sure it's accessible.
That's very positive feedback. Thank you for that. It's good. Any other further discussion or questions in regard to the recommendation? We had a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Again? Thank you. So will you.
Item 17228, cash and investments, as at 31st of October 2017. As you can see, the report is fairly self-explanatory again there, and again worth noting that we are tracking ahead on the income earned at this time of year, which is obviously far more positive than the other way around.
Just question 3, Mr Mayor. Mr Gentleman, can we get the Standard & Poor's ratings for these institutions added to that report so we can get some idea of the risk outstanding court ratings. So that's some idea of the risk that we're exposed to when we make investments in them.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, I'll ensure that future reports include that information.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Have I got a mover and a second for the recommendation? Moved Councillor O'Connor, seconded Councillor Tuckerman. Any questions? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Again? So be it.
Item 17229, development application stats for October 2017. Again, this report is provided for information. Recommendation is as included.
Moved Councillor Tuckerman, seconded Councillor Manchester. Any questions? If not,
One question, Mr Mayor, in regards to staffing levels. Have we been successful in ensuring we have a complete team at the planning department?
Through Mr Mayor, we've recently had our senior strategic planner start. We did offer a position to a strategic planner that initially accepted and then withdrew, and we didn't have any other suitable candidates other than that one, so that is one position that's being re-advertised. We're about to re-advertise again for a role that we previously told it is a land use planner that we're changing to be a statutory planner to probably better reflect out in the industry what it is we're after. So that's the person that would do DA assessments. We're also happy to go out again for a building surveyor position that we didn't get any suitable candidates for last time. In the interim, we've been using contractors which do come at a slightly higher cost, but at the moment we haven't had any alternative but to use contractors to fill the resource gap. The other one is we've also appointed a building and compliance manager, but they're unable to start to the new calendar year, so they'll be starting in January. And then we're also having to re-advertise for the compliance officer position that sits in under there too. So that part of the organisation is still the one that's most under-resourced at the moment, but we're using contract resources in the interim to fill the gap.
Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, question for the Director. Whilst we're on staffing issues, given my knowledge of some of the staff who have left the Harden office since amalgamations were first announced, could we please have a report over in open forum or closed on the staffing numbers in the administration division of Harden and Burra for that matter, please? As we have amalgamation commitments that the numbers don't change.
It's been noted. Councillor Flannery.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can bring that report back, but just to give you an indication, so the senior strategic planner role that I referred to is a position that previously wasn't in the Harden office. That's one of the positions that now is being based out of Harden. The strategic planner position is also going to be based out of Harden, so we would have had someone else new coming into the office recently. We've had some engineering positions that have recently been filled in the Harden office too. Some of the new engineering positions that we've recently recruited, including a project engineer and a survey and design officer, have been located in the Borough office, so that's offset some of the changes that have happened over there. So I can bring back a more comprehensive report on, I don't know whether you want where positions are based or you just want the head counts or what it is you're after.
Both would be useful because I think councillors may decide to augment where we believe our departments should or should not exist.
Through Mr Mayor, just one comment on that I would make is that it's not the councillor's role to determine the operational needs of the organisation in under the senior management team. But just as a general piece of feedback that I can give you, one of our biggest issues at the moment is finding enough room in the Borough and Harden offices to fit the people that we intend to put in. So if the concern is a reduction of numbers, that is certainly not something to be concerned about. But we'll bring the report back.
Thank you. So if I've no further questions in regard to that report, put the recommendation. All those in favour? Again? Thank you.
Item 17.230, submission to New South Wales DPE Primary Production and Rural Development. Again, this is one of the current pieces of information, I guess you could call it, that the New South Wales government has put out for feedback on. There's quite a few at the moment that are floating around. You see, as is proposed here, we've tried to come up with what you could call a fairly balanced position on what's being proposed. There are some things in there that staff have identified as a bit of a concern that may have unintended outcomes that move back to probably some of the retrospective things that have been done in the past, particularly around the concept of concessional lots, where in rural areas the intention was that for succession into the future there might be an opportunity to have secondary houses on rural properties that are split off into smaller lots. The risk is that they're without controls in place for that then to be sold off separately down the track. The outcome would be that you end up with so I guess splitting up of what should be agricultural land into, call them lifestyle blocks, through a different course of action other than what the LEP allows. So that's one of the main things that we've identified here as a concern. And then I guess the recommendation is that Council receives this report and then makes a submission on the proposed SEP for primary production and rural development based on the content of that report.
Question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, will that submission come back for Council to see, or will just be paid directly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to go through the same process of circulating to councillors for review, and then, as Councillor Flannery mentioned earlier, bring it back for final formal endorsement after it's submitted. But timing-wise, we don't really have much opportunity to do anything other than that.
So just to clarify, it will come back to council. It will come to council before it's submitted, or you don't have time.
Yeah, so through Mr. Mayor, it is due before the next council meeting, this one, for closure.
Given we're in the harvest period and I don't know whether I will or won't have time to respond to a circulation, I would speak against council inferring there's anything detrimental with concessional allotments. I don't think there's any evidence from past history that there's a problem with concessional allotments. It in fact enabled a very easy movement of rural holdings without causing a split of the household, and it's a counterintuitive argument that if you increase the minimum lot size on rural land, that you actually cause a disaggregation of the farm. The smaller the lot you can have, the less disaggregation you have, and I speak in a potential conflict of interest. I have 4 daughters, some who may or may not wish to be involved in the farm, and I think Councillor O'Connor's probably in a similar situation where children may or may not wish to be involved in their farming operation. The notion that I, in 10 years' time, may have to subdivide off 400 acres as a minimum lot to provide one of my daughters who may wish to live in the rural environment but work in a professional capability would cause a severe disaggregation of my farm. If they were able to divide off a house in 20 acres, it would have almost no operational impact on me, including financial ability to mortgage that land. So the notion that we should have bigger lot sizes which limits disaggregation is actually a very false one, and concessional allotments proved a very worthwhile method of transferring on a house. In fact, even subdividing it off so banks didn't have the ability to sell off your house if they sold your farm. And I think it's testament to the Department of Planning in Sydney's lack of understanding of anything west of the Blue Mountains that they keep pushing this notion. They keep pushing the notion that they won't allow additional subdivisions because there's vacant blocks in towns like Harden and Burua. People don't wish to sell those blocks, and people don't wish to subdivide their farms into uneconomic parcels.
Yes, if I may also make a comment, Mr. Mayor, in support of what Councillor Flannery says, the whole notion that 400 acres is there and it's going to be sufficient to have a commercial farm on. It's just ludicrous. And so I fully support what he said.
And I again support both councillors in those thoughts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as mentioned, we'll make sure this gets circulated. I guess the point is there are examples of where it has had a negative outcome, and I guess the intention is very much the right intention of what you're saying. I think it's about having the right controls in place to restrict it becoming something that gets sold off down the track as a, for example, if a farmer got into financial difficulty and they chose to sell that off, or down the track the family circumstances changed, and that the concept of what it is could propagate and become something that happens regularly. But completely get the intention of why it's a good idea. It's just making sure that there's some sort of control around it doing what it's intended to do, as you say.
Those decisions and whether Rabobank's statistics are something like less than 1 in 100 farms get into financial difficulty or they are forced to take action on. So it's a less than 1% occurrence, and that would go across all farm sizes. So we're supposing a policy based on a very limited range of circumstances, and if you're in a position to sell off some land, what we're actually talking about is a house as a concessional allotment or a small parcel of land to enable a house to be built. If you're in a position to do that which keeps your farm viable, that should be your entitlement apart from anything else. There are other means such as a DCP, the Development Control Plan, that can limit the extent of subdivisions within a certain area, and also things like the LEP and requisite notice to anyone that might buy or subdivide land can be included that notify potential vendors of the agricultural amenity of the building of the area. You have to be pretty stupid to know that you're buying a house in an agricultural area and without being advised of it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is there a minimum and maximum size for concessional allotments?
So, through the Mayor, there is no proposed minimum or maximum under this SEP. Similarly, just following on from Councillor Flannery's points, the SEP actually overrides any LEP and DCP that Council may have in place. This is a state government policy, and it's a higher level policy than anything that Council may have in place, and Council policies can't contradict or be more onerous than a state policy.
That's exactly right. That's why we need to make sure the state policy is the policy that we want. Otherwise, if we have a policy at state level that we're happy with, we can then put other policies in place through a DCP that we can act on.
So
yes, our submission don't kibosh the notion of concessional allotments.
Sorry, through the Mayor, if I may. The report as it sits doesn't actually say no concessional allotments. It just says there needs to be some serious consideration around the controls that allow those concessional allotments to occur. So I'm just seeking some clarification. Is that the line we want the submission to take?
I believe we should support the concessional allotments as per the revised government policy, and I think we have sufficient means at our disposal at the council level to put those controls in place. I don't believe we need to flag it at the state government level there. State government's legislations are often onerous enough as it is.
Through Mr. Mayor, one last thing, you read this in the report. There are mechanisms in place like a Section 88B instrument to put restrictions on what can happen, and if the feeling I'm getting is that this council certainly thinks that even though it is a bit of a resource intense and can be a little bit complicated to manage that process, it is something that is worth the effort, basically, is the impression that I'm getting, and we can certainly waiver the submission to be supportive of that.
I think that's indicative of what Councillor was talking about, and as I said, I strongly agree with it. So taking all that into consideration, we've got a mover and second for the recommendation. Councillor Plenary, Councillor Rolls. All those in favour? Again, so be it. Thank you for the discussion.
Item 17.231, application to amend development consent to DA 36/2015 for the construction of a 3-bedroom dwelling on Lot 2, Section 7, DP 758319 in Harden Street, Cunningar. Again, you see in the report here, it's fairly simple. There's a minor modification to the dimensions and the layout of the DA that was previously approved, and the applicant was seeking to modify those dimensions. So the recommendation is included in the report.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Moved Councillor Horton. Seconded Councillor Manchester. Any questions or debate? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Again, so be it.
Can we just get a show of hands on that?
Sorry, yeah.
So it's unanimous. Yep. Item 17.232, waste facility operating hours. Again, I think this report is fairly self-explanatory and basically provides an evidence base behind a modification to operating hours of the Red Hill Road Waste Management Facility. So for context, that was something that was previously managed under contract. Council is about to take the management of that facility back over. It's where commercial material is taken. You see in the statistics there that there's a period of the day where it's rarely accessed at all. So the point is it's not really providing value for money for the community in having those additional hours. The other component relates to modifications, slight modification of the Murray Waste Transfer Station operating hours. The reason that's being proposed is so that we can better manage the facility, and as councillors will recall, we have had an issue within the last sort of 12 months at that site, and it was really around our monitoring and management of that site, hence the site modification proposed there. So the recommendation is included.
Moved Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Any questions or discussion? Councillor Armstrong.
Question, through Mr. Mayor to the General Manager. In recent years, this facility experienced a fire, substantial fire, and as a result of that, Council was going to review the fire control, fire suppression facilities that were in place at the site. Have there been any developments in that at all? I'm just concerned that if kids get in there and light a fire after the thing's closed, we might have fire burning at tomorrow before we get too far.
So, through the Mayor, it's part of the upgrades that we're proposing to do at Red Hill when it comes back under our control, and it includes a proper facility for workers as opposed to what's currently there, so a full site office with toilets, hand wash facilities and those sorts of things. So it's part of the upgrade that is proposed to that facility.
So that's not done? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Any other questions or discussion on that? If not, have I got a mover and a seconder? We have them? Yep. All those in favour? Aye. Again, so be it.
Mr. Mayor, just while we're on the waste matters, is there any comment on the issues highlighted by the earlier public forum speaker, particularly in relation to the Moringo tip?
Through Mr. Mayor, in this workshop we had earlier on the community strategic plan, it was something that's certainly coming up as a theme. It's the whole waste management across the community, not just the village things. I'll check with the director, but we had called for submissions for our waste management strategy and business plan to be done, which will guide basically what services we provide at what cost going forward across the whole area. And the intention is that we'll have a workshop with council once the consultants engaged to start that. But have we received those yet? Not yet. They haven't closed yet. Okay. So So that is in train to look at what we need to do across the whole area to better manage our waste and what it's going to cost.
So at Maringa in particular, where it was noted that the bins are full by Wednesday, is there council putting in place procedures to deal with that?
Through Mr Mayor, one thing we became aware of that within the last 2 to 3 weeks, and we actually have got 2 more skip bins have actually been taken out there in the last fortnight. Okay, so they haven't gone yet, but they are going out. We were only recently made aware of that issue, and it was checked. Yeah, that's been changed.
Thank you. So we're up to correspondence. And the recommendation on the first part, the Council will provide a letter of support to the New South Wales Rural Fire Service Association. Thank you, Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Rolls. All those in favour? Again, so be it. The second recommendation is that the balance of correspondence be noted.
Through Mr Mayor, there was another recommendation there about another letter of support to Frankstown City Council too.
Sorry, it is recommended that Council provide a letter of support to Frankston City Council. So the mover and seconder for that recommendation. Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Rolls, thank you. All those in favour? Aye again. Thank you. Now we'll go to the recommendation that says the balance of correspondence be noted. Move that way, Councillor Horton, seconded Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour? Aye. So be it.
Mr Mayor, can I just take the opportunity to congratulate the staff in regards to the Brewer Netball and Football Carnival. It's certainly a huge day for the Brewer community and the region, and I think the exceptional work that the staff does in preparing for that, which does take some time, certainly adds to the success of the carnival.
Thank you for that, Councillor Tuckerman. It is a great achievement by a small community, there's no doubt. Okay, we got to the council committee reports. And the first one is from the Gaylon Progress Association, and there's a recommendation there. It is recommended council to erect the no-through road sign at the beginning of Station Street, Gaylon, and options for collection of household goods be considered as part of the waste management strategy. Move Councillor Horton. Second, Councillor Flannery.
Can I just clarify with Bill, the no-through, that's down on the bottom side of the railway line, down?
Yeah, just basically at the end of the bridge.
Yep, so...
At Station Street.
Thank you. And you're asking for what the options are for collection of how? Are you asking for a once monthly or a 6 months quarterly or a consistent with other towns, or can we probably get advice from the General Manager on what household collection is available throughout the Shire generally and what might be available to Gaylon?
Through Mr Mayor, that's the intention is that gets picked up as part 2 in the recommendation as options for collection of household goods be considered as part of the waste management strategy, which is looking at everything across the board rather than say each village necessarily in isolation, and figuring out what that will cost and what we do provide.
Do we have a household collection in the towns? I must admit I'm not familiar. No, we don't.
Through Mr Mayor, what we did do this year was provide 2 vouchers to each ratepayer to be able to access the tips free of charge to take in what in the past in Young may have been collected by that process, and the intention was we did that as a bit of an interim measure until we fully assess what the options are and what the costs might be of different options for that.
So a letter will go. Do we, if we vote on this, we are voting to erect the sign, and then a letter will go back to the Progress Association and probably all others advising them that we're doing a waste review strategy.
Okay, everyone's happy with that explanation.
Just a question in regards to some of those other items that were requested. The levelling of the ruts and holes in Limestone Park and Oval. I know that was an issue some time ago.
Through the chair, I'll take that on notice, Councillor Wynne.
No further questions. Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Again, so be it. The next one is the Hilltops Environmental Initiative Committee, and the recommendation is for Council to adopt the recommendations of the committee. Councillor Flannery, move. Seconder. Councillor Rolls. Any questions? I'll put it. All those in favour? Again, so be it. And the next recommendation is that the balance of the committee reports be noted. Councillor Manchester, Councillor O'Connor, thank you. All those in favour? Again, so be it. There. I seek a motion for council to go into closed business.
So moved.
Moved